Hello, let's go Hebrews 8. Hebrews 8 starts with some fantastic words to hear. Now, the point in what we are saying is this. I don't know if you've ever been reading the Bible and thought, I'm following, I think I know where we're going, but somebody help me by summarizing the point. I love the fact that Hebrews 8 starts by just saying, this is the point in all this, everything that you've just read. We have such a high priest. We have the kind of high priest that we've just been talking about in the previous chapters. You know, we've talked about the fact that priests were mediators between man and God, who would carry, requests and offerings between the two. But the high priest is one who could go into the holiest places, who would literally carry the blood of sacrifice that was to pay for the sins of man, or to clean away the sins of man and make them righteous in God's sight. And so the high priest is the one who goes closer than any other, to God himself. And our high priest is Jesus. He's already done those things. He's gone right to God on our behalf. He's paid the price. He's taken in the blood of sacrifice that has made us clean, that has made us righteous. And it says that he is seated at the right hand of the throne of the majesty in heaven. You know, we read in Revelation 3 that the seats by the throne, the seat right next to the throne of God, is reserved for the one who will conquer. And that's Jesus. Jesus is the one who's conquered everything that we face, everything that is in the world around us. It's all conquered by him, and that's why he sits there. That he is a minister in holy places, in the true tent that the Lord set up, not man. So in these first few verses of chapter 8, we get a little bit of a summary of Jesus's priesthood. And we get a glimpse into some of what I think the theme to Hebrews 8 is, which is internal versus external. It's the authentic tent of God versus the one that was man-made, the one that Moses was asked to put in place, the tabernacle. And it says down in verse 5, when Moses was about to put this tent up, he was instructed by God saying, see that you make everything according to the pattern that was shown you. You know, Moses' task was to make it as true to God's instruction as he possibly could, because God wanted a truest likeness as possible to be experienced on earth as to what heaven is and what heaven feels like. That doesn't mean to say that heaven has a place that looks exactly like the tabernacle, but all of the constructs of the tabernacle, all of the symbolism, it all represents something of the place and the feel and the culture of heaven that we'll one day experience. So Moses was given some exact instructions, and God said, try and do it to the letter, so that I can create something for you that is representative, symbolic of heaven. But now we're told that we actually get to experience something even greater than that. Not man-made attempts at the symbolism of heaven, but actually the person of heaven. We get to experience Jesus, who dwells in heaven, who knows heaven, and he is our great high priest. He's the one who goes between us and God and argues and represents us and speaks on our behalf, which is such an amazing thing. So if ever you feel like, heaven feels distant, or some of those promises that we read about no more weeping and no more suffering, if you ever feel like that is distant, the best thing that we can experience here on earth is the person of Jesus. And when we spend time in Jesus's presence, we actually get a glimpse into heavenly things, heavenly places, and heavenly culture. So it goes on to say that, what Moses created, it was an attempt, it was a basic version, but what Jesus has won us is something much better. And in verse 7 it says, if that first covenant had been faultless, there would have been no need for a second one. If it had all worked out fine with the first approach, the Old Testament way of doing things, the law, then we wouldn't have needed Jesus. But as it stands, the law itself was something that was external to us. We tried to enact it. We tried to, sometimes more than others, live by its words. But we as people fall short of that. And we got to remember for a moment that the law was not cast out by Jesus, it was fulfilled by Jesus. And the law in itself was a plan of God, not just to make us jump through hoops and look and sound a certain way, but actually to draw us closer to him, because we're never closer to him than when we're living right, blameless, righteous lives in his eyes. So the law was an attempt to minimize the gap between us and God, but that law didn't work for us. We didn't work, in fact, for the law. It's not the law that failed, it's us. And we see this as it goes on down into saying, I will establish a new covenant, not the old one, because mankind could not fulfill that covenant. They couldn't do it. They couldn't live by the laws of righteousness that I required of them. And because they strayed from that, I distanced from them. But now there's a new covenant that's coming. And all of the words of the old covenant base around this concept of, if you do this, if you wash like this, if you perform sacrifices in this way, then our closeness will be renewed. But the new covenant has new buzzwords. It's I will. I will. It's repeated multiple times in my version here in Hebrews 8. God says, I will make a new covenant with the house of Israel. Verse 10, I will put my laws into their minds and write them on their hearts. I will be their God and they will be my people. Verse 12, I will be merciful to them and their iniquities. I will remember their sins no more. God's saying the new covenant is on me. I will enact it. I will fulfill it through my son Jesus, through his high priesthood. It's not based on what we do, it's based on what Jesus has done for us. But I love the fact that it talks about putting the law into our minds, writing it on our hearts. It becomes an internal exchange with heaven, not just about what we do, but about what we know and how we think. And finally, we get reminded in verse 13 that the old one, the first covenant, the first agreement between man and God, which is the fulfillment of Old Testament law, is now obsolete. We can't go back to it. It does not exist anymore. It's gone. So that's some thoughts on Hebrews 8. And if you think about it, it's incredible what God has done for us. It's amazing. It's encouraging. And I'm looking forward to Hebrews 9 tomorrow.